Feel like there's always a new employment law or HR requirement that you have to unpack or decipher? With only so many hours in a day, it is hard to keep up. I know it is ridiculously hard for me and my clients. That's why Comply Right, who is the leading provider of employment law compliance solutions, actually developed a podcast that is easy to digest. It's called Talking HR Compliance, and it covers trending HR topics like hiring and record keeping, along with tax reporting and legal compliance. And you get practical insights you can use from an experienced HR solution manager who's actually seen it all. And that's what we all need. Just tell us what to do. Check it out over a morning cup of coffee or on your commute. You can find it where you listen to any of your podcasts, whether it be Google, Stitcher, Apple, or Spotify. And make sure you subscribe. Again, it's called Talking HR Compliance. You don't want to miss an episode.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to The Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jaime Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I'm Jaime Masters, and today I am so excited to have my good friend Josh Turner back on the show. You can check out his site at linkselling.com, and he's got a brand new book coming out called Trust Equation that you can actually get for free if you stay tuned to the end of the interview. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Josh.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jaime.
So you're giving your book away for free. For number one, tell us why it's absolutely amazing and everybody needs to get it. And number two, it's free.
Yeah, so this is my third book that I've released. We've had one that was a Wall Street Journal bestseller and did all of that kind of stuff. And this time I just wanted to get it in the hands of as many people as possible, as quickly as I could. And so that's why we're giving away free digital copies. And anybody who wants one can go to connect365.io/EM. And that stands for Eventual Millionaire.
So everybody remembers for later.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
But the reason why I wrote this book is because over the last few years, we've been seeing a lot of things with our clients and a lot of folks in the community we serve, which is small businesses who are really finding that the things that used to work for them aren't working the way that they used to anymore. And they're seeing diminishing results. They're seeing ad costs going up. They're seeing ad performance going down. They're seeing email open rates dropping. Just a lot of the online marketing tactics that are kind of the staples, just not working the way they were supposed to. And a lot of people are just getting diminishing results and getting frustrated, especially really small businesses who are getting terrible results and just finding themselves not growing. And one of the things that we're finding and seeing out there, and that I'm hearing from so many people, and that you hear it on the news all the time, is that trust today is at an all-time low, not just in business, but just in general in the world with, these tech companies and all the scandals that are coming out around that stuff. Our politicians, we don't need to get into all that right now. But, a couple weeks back for their big year, not their year, but their decade wrap up of the 2010s, the New York Times had a huge cover story that was titled "A Decade of Distrust." And people are just feeling like everything that we knew is crumbling. And so in business, what we think is happening is that this is all seeping through, and that the prospects that you're trying to reach with your marketing, they really have their guard up. The stuff that used to work isn't working anymore. They're hip to it. The email newsletter type stuff that people send out doesn't work anymore. People are just far less responsive than they used to be. They're very hard to break through. And what we're seeing is that a lot of people are getting back to good old-fashioned personal relationship building. At the same time, though, there's only so much that can scale. And so over the last few years, my company was looking for a solution to, how can we combine the power of these marketing automation tools, but do it in a way to where it doesn't feel like such garbage, that actually feels like it's personal, so that you're building relationships and building trust with people instead of the opposite, breaking it down. And that's what the trust equation is. So we've developed a methodology that we think is the best for doing exactly that. For building relationships with new prospects, for maintaining relationships with your existing network and connections and clients and prospects, and doing it in a way that it really has a personal touch to it. And so it is, we believe, really the future of how small businesses are going to be marketing. And, we can get into that more, but that's the gist of it.
Oh, we're definitely going to get into it more. And I just have to say, especially on LinkedIn, because I know you're the LinkedIn guy also, is it came from getting bombarded with messages, and I'd be nice to everyone, like, no, thank you. Okay, great. And now I'm just like, no, I don't care anymore. You're taking up so much of my time, right? So my guard has gotten deeper and deeper and deeper. And normally I love connecting with people, but it's just so much. It's information overload. And so I want to totally get into how we actually build that trust, because it's really difficult to break through all of the noise in the world that we have
Sure.
right now. So what is this equation that we now need to know?
Well, the one thing I would like to say is that there's in the past there were really two options. Now, number one, you could just do things old school and just be totally offline. And, a lot of people have success with that. A lot of people built great businesses before the internet even existed.
I know some people are like, wait, really? Like I used to do only offline businesses. There are ways that you can get to people without the internet, just so everybody's clear. Just a reminder. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so until very recently, it was either you're going to be, you got to do things the old fashioned way, one-on-one, just it's going to be time intensive, or you decide to really go deep into marketing automation, online tools and technologies to try and gain leverage and efficiency to reach more numbers and more reach and scale than you can through one-on-one. But the problem with all the online automation stuff and the marketing automation stuff is that for so many small businesses, that stuff is really built for bigger companies. And it's designed for bigger companies that have massive email lists and really market in a very impersonal way. Whereas that doesn't work for small businesses. And this is the problem that we've seen is that, so many of us grew up being exposed to big company marketing. And then when it's time for us to think about how we're going to market our businesses, too many people use that same playbook. But for smaller companies that have small audiences, it really doesn't work. And so they're just sending out these kind of, really not very effective marketing messages that are like old school email newsletter kind of things. And so in the past, it was basically, let's choose one of those options, the lesser of two evils. And we felt like we need to have a way to combine those two things. Now, here's the thing. In marketing, there's never a 100% solution for, if you're going to be doing outreach to new prospects or, just sales in general is not a 100% situation where you're going to get everybody. But what we're finding is that if let's say you've got, a few hundred people in your database and you're going to try and just run them through your, Infusionsoft or Aweber account and, see who ends up popping out the other side, you're going to get a really small percentage of people that are going to end up converting off of that email list into whatever the next step is that you want them to take. Because, only like 15% of them are going to even open the emails in the first place. And then maybe 10% of those people click through, et cetera, et cetera. And that's okay if you've got 300,000 people on your email list. But when you only have a few hundred or a couple thousand, you need to market to those people in a much more personal way. You need to be communicating with them in a way that is more informal, with messages that feel like the kind that you would send to a friend, that don't have unsubscribe links in them, that don't end up in their promotions tab or their spam folder, right? Yeah, and so there's technology that now allows that to be done in a way that can be automated for people who have smaller databases, so that you can make personal touches, so that you can have those kinds of like personal emails going out to lots of people, but have it automated and have the follow-up automated, but have all of it come across looking like you just wrote it to them as a friend, so that the emails feel very personal and not like a marketing message with lots of images and, calls to action and all that kind of stuff. And so what we're seeing is that people who are implementing this kind of a methodology are getting, over double the open rates that they would get using something like MailChimp or whatever, which are great tools for certain things. But for trying to build trust and build relationships with your most important prospects and clients, those tools are just that people are just ignoring those things now, And so that's at the heart of like really what the trust equation is all about. And then in the book I go into depth on really there's basically 4 primary pillars to it of getting connected and building and having ways to continually build your list, and then how to be reaching out to new prospects who are coming into your world or that don't even know you, and maybe you're reaching out to them cold, and how to build a relationship with them really quickly and do it in a way that actually is building trust instead of you just looking like another person, like you said, on LinkedIn.
Can you give us a tip on that then too? Because I think that's the thing that's so incredible. It's like, well, what do I actually say to actually get them to pay attention in that first message, regardless of how we get that message?
There are a lot of different ways to go about that depending on your business.
Okay.
And so, sometimes like your show is a great example of that. For some people, it's inviting them to be a part of something. It could be inviting them to be a part of a LinkedIn group that you start, or inviting them to be a part of a Facebook group that you have that is full of people like them. So sometimes it's giving first. Other times it's just the way that you position the message to really come across as more of a peer as opposed to somebody who's just trying to sell them something. Because a lot of people will, now we're getting into kind of like cold email best practices here. I think for a lot of people, cold email in the traditional sense is really not going to be effective. And
I appreciate you saying that. You need huge numbers for the minuscule amounts that you need, even when the messages are pretty on point.
Yeah. You got to think about this more in terms of building relationships as opposed to getting an email list and then pitching those people on your services and having a conversation with you. Because the latter can work, but to your point, very low response rate. And for a lot of businesses, it just doesn't work like that. Like, yeah, if you're a B2B SaaS company, you work with this specific type of prospect and every one of them is going to be interested in what you do. Like, yeah, there's some companies that crush it with cold email. Absolutely. But, if you're a business coach or, if you're a real estate agent, any other like just litany of types of companies like that, who it's you need to first position yourself as somebody that they see as a leader and an expert, and you need to build the relationship a little bit first. You're not just going to reach out and cold email somebody and pitch them on, hey, let me sell your house for you. It's not going to work.
So question on that though, too, because I know we've got more pillars to go through, but I really want to dive into this because I feel like what's being taught, especially in LinkedIn, regardless of platform, it's like, oh, give, jab, right hooks. But the jabs nowadays are like, here's the thing, long thing of text, random link that I don't actually care about. Great, like bombarded with stuff. So how, like that's still technically pieces of what you're saying, and that's noise because it's really difficult to get somebody to read something from you. So any tips on what that sequence, even if you're trying to give, even if you're trying to invite them into a Facebook group, unless it's super exclusive with like millionaires, I'm like, I don't care. Right. Yeah. So how do you get through?
Yeah. Well, like you're not going to get through to everybody. And so, you're going to be a difficult person for people to lure into their Facebook group.
I'm very difficult. Yeah.
But there's other people who, if they have a Facebook group, let's say it's somebody who helps podcast hosts and they've got some sort of service and they have a community full of podcast hosts sharing resources and stuff, and they invite you to be a part of it. Now, you may not be interested, but a lot of people they message might be interested in it. And so it's always a numbers game with this stuff. But when you provide value first, the numbers are much greater than when you just cold pitch.
Yeah.
And so on like with LinkedIn, and you can replicate these strategies whether you're using email or LinkedIn messaging, whatever platform you're doing it on. But we for example, if you just reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and you're just cold pitching people or sending in mails, you might get 1 or 2% response of people who are like, okay, sure, I'll talk to you about the thing that you sell. But if you first connect with them, provide some value, invite them into a group that's full of their peers, and then wait a little bit, develop the relationship and a little bit of top of mind awareness, and then invite them to a conversation to learn more about each other, you will get more like a 15 to 20% response rate. You're never going to get 100. There's always going to be people like Jaime who are not going to respond to your messages.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can dramatically increase it. And the key, I think, is it's the importance of really caring about the relationships and building relationships with people. And the other thing that people do, and this is getting into really the third pillar of the system, but the not only just the initial outreach is important, because if you look at in the Ultimate Sales Machine, they have this thing called the demand gen pyramid. And at the very top of the pyramid, the smallest little triangle, 3% of people who in your target market are ready to buy. Mm. And so there's a very small percentage of your market out there who's thinking about buying what you want right now. And so a lot of the people that you're making initial contacts with aren't ready right away, but people do a terrible job of following up. And one of the best ways to use this kind of a methodology and with the trust equation is not just for that initial outreach, but to maintain contact with people in a personal way for months or years even. And so the key is like if you have a call with a prospect, you meet somebody at a conference or an event or whatever it might be, and then you go home and you dump them into your Infusionsoft. That is like one layer of it's a way to stay in touch with people at a minimum if you're not doing anything else. But for a lot of people, they're not really getting much out of that, because then there's just, what are those people really receiving from you? People know it's not really you keeping in touch with them. You're just getting their marketing messages. Yep. But on the other hand, if you were able to send your contacts and the people that you care about keeping in touch with a personal email once a month, once every 6 weeks, whatever it might be, maybe once every few weeks, it's different for every business. But if you're able to send people a personal email saying, hey, was just thinking about you, came across this article the other day and thought you might be interested in checking it out. Hope you're doing well. Or, and then maybe 6 weeks later, you send them another message that's, just hey, keeping in touch. I got this new client I'm working with who's doing amazing things and yada, yada, yada. Hope you're doing well. But if you just have a plan to keep in touch with people, and there's a variety of ways you can kind of mix up those messages so that it kind of stays fresh and doesn't feel like you're just pestering people month after month.
I found another article. I found it. Yeah. Exactly.
You have to vary it up.
Yep.
But the point is also just like of being transparent with people and saying, hey, I am, working to stay in touch with the people who I really care about and I value our relationship. And so I hope it's okay with you, but, I might check in with you every month or two and just make sure that we're keeping in touch, because people always say, let's keep in touch. And then they really don't.
Yep. And
so I think that there's a great way to do it. Again, in the book, we got all sorts of templates and ideas on how to do this kind of thing. And people will say, yeah, but that takes too much time to do.
That was going to be my next question, because I want to talk about tech also in a second, but I want to go, how many people can we actually manage, especially as the business owner and not the team? Because 150 people is a lot of people potentially sending emails, and we're trying to get out of our inbox all the time.
Nobody's going to do that, right? And that's why you have to use technology that allows you to do it, but that allows you to send those emails to those people in a way that they come across looking like you wrote to each of those people one-on-one, right? So we have a software that you can read about in the book as well that allows you to do that, which we built because we needed something that could really solve this problem, so that people could have something that works with their personal email that would allow them to upload a list of a few hundred people and send them all a message that looks personal, coming from their real email, that doesn't have an unsubscribe link, that hits their normal inbox, not the promotions tab, and all those kinds of things.
Okay, so questions about that. So that's Connect 365, right?
Yeah.
Software. Okay. Mm-hmm. So how can you do that with CanSpam and everything like that, especially with the no unsubscribe link? You know what I mean? I came from mail server days back in the day.
You just have to have a little thing in your footer of the email. This is usually how we deal with it. There's a lot of ways. So if you have something in your email at the bottom that says PS, if you don't want to hear from me anymore, just hit reply and let me know. And then you can, you can remove them from your list that way. So the way that the CanSpam rules, basically what they say is you have to give people a clear way to get off of your list.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a link.
Okay. Doesn't have to be a link, right? Okay. You also have to make sure that the email is clear about who this is coming from and include your business information in the email. And so we always recommend people just put your business name and your address and your signature and your emails. So there's some really easy ways to do it. The other thing too is that for some folks who have lists of say under 1,000, email lists with less than 1,000 people on them, we have a lot of customers who are using Connect 365 for all of their email. They can add an unsubscribe link if they want to. But even when you do that, using this technology, because it comes from your real email and it's not being sent through like a third-party provider like SendGrid or some of the other big email sending platforms, the emails get such a greater open rate and reply rate and look like a real email you sent to somebody instead of a marketing message. And so it's really effective for that kind of thing too.
Yeah, I typically use like mail merge or something like that, but then it starts to get a little squirrely from me after a little bit, right? So you're like, wait, where did especially when I have a team that sometimes works on them, and right? So how do you keep track? And should it always be the owner and coming from the owner, or should it be from the team member? So that way it doesn't get to be too crazy if you have a bigger list?
Yeah, if you have a big list, you would use this kind of a methodology for communicating with your most engaged segments of your list. So for example, if you have if you got a list with 10,000 or 30,000 or 300,000 people on it, one way that a lot of our clients are using this is to pull out smaller segments of that list. Let's say, hey, the most engaged people on your list in the last 30 days, and send them a personal email that comes from somebody on your team inviting them into a conversation. Things like that are really effective.
Yeah. You're always really good at segmenting your list anyway. Like back in the day when we used to chat, I was like, wow, you got a lot of segment. You were always paying attention to curation of that. Do you have any tips on that also? Because it would be helpful, especially for open rates, I'm sure, and engagement.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. But I think that I'm just trying to think of how to what I can best share that would be helpful for most people. The thing that I think is most important with that in terms of open rates is just list cleanliness. If you've got a big email list, of making sure that you're not mailing to people who haven't opened an email in forever. And so scrubbing the list is important. Segmenting, I think, is something like I don't consider myself an expert in. You could probably have somebody on here who could talk about that for an hour, but we just try and make sure that we have the right data we need to determine who's interested in what content. And so that's why like tools like Infusionsoft, HubSpot, MailChimp, et cetera, are really good at that kind of a thing. And then we can take those people in those specific segments and send them more personal communications that get a much greater reply rate, open rate, all that stuff through Connect 365. There's a lot of other things you can do. If you've got a big list, we communicate with our JV partners using Connect 365 instead of Infusionsoft. We use Infusionsoft in our business. And, we have some really neat things that we're doing to send emails to people before webinars from Connect 365 because the emails get such a greater open rate and reply rate than the Infusionsoft campaigns. Yeah. And so it increases show up rate.
Okay. What's different? Because I mean, the open rate issue is a big deal. Deliverability is a big deal. Promotions tab is a huge deal. Everybody's like, what the? I know we were blacklisted last year. It was great. It was awesome. My own fault I was managing my own mail server, which was a really bad idea. Okay. Side note. So trying to get back on track after something like that, does Connect 65 or whatever mail merge, or does it automatically not go in the promotions tab, or can you get flagged and be put in the promotions tab also?
You can end up in there. Yeah. I mean, it has to do with the eventually, if you got a bunch of people who are still clicking the spam button on your emails, then eventually, Gmail is going to say, hey, anybody who's got this, whenever this email comes through from this person, put it in that promotions tab or the spam folder, right?
Mm.
So you can't just you can't use this for evil and expect not to get those same kinds of negative results, basically.
Yep.
But to your question earlier, though, you brought up mail merge again. This is one of the reasons why we created this, because for a number of years, we were using spreadsheets and mail merge to do this exact thing.
Yep.
Because it gets such great results, because the emails come across looking like you wrote them one-on-one to a friend. But with mail merge, it becomes cumbersome to manage. If somebody replies to an email, how do you make sure they don't get the next one that you send out to that batch of prospects?
Totally.
It's just not smart enough to do anything except a one-off broadcast to those people. And so Connect 365 allows you to build out long-term sequences, so those people are going to get dripped out a series of messages. And it does a lot of advanced things, such as remove them from the campaign if they reply to a message, and things like that, so that it functions like a true autoresponder would, except that it's coming from your personal email.
Do you have to throttle those and stuff like that, like you do with? Does the system actually throttle it so that way you don't get in trouble?
Well, there's only so many you can send.
Yeah. Well, I know. Like even in a cold email campaign. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Most of our customers, we're recommending, don't send more than a few hundred in a day.
Yep.
Now, once you kind of get ramped up and you got a feel for things and you're doing things the right way, the technical maximum that you can send is 2,000 a day, and that's just a Google thing. That's what they say. And to that point too about Google, this is not like a bot or something like that. This works directly with the Google Gmail API and G Suite, as well as Outlook's API. It's approved by Google. We have to go through a security audit every year. Great. Where they have a third-party team review the entire application and make sure it's not doing anything nefarious.
I appreciate you saying that, because sometimes people are like, what gray area are we in right now? Right? Like, is it where are we at? Because nobody wants to get shut down without knowing. And of course, you have a business built and you're talking all about it. So I'm assuming it's okay. But I appreciate you saying that too. When you're actually, is the interface in Connect 365, or is it in your Gmail because I want to know if the team can actually go in and not have it be messed up with your own inbox? Yeah,
it's an app. It's not like a browser extension or something like that. So you log into Connect 365 as a standalone application, and then that on the back end is integrating with your email account.
Do you still get it in your email account too, though, or does it go somewhere? Do you know what I mean? Are we dealing with the messages twice in two separate things, or no?
No, no, one only shows up once. Okay. Yeah, and so you could have your team manage it if you wanted to, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. Some of our customers will set up unique emails that they only use with Connect 365. There's all sorts of different ways to set it up. But it really is it's a different way of marketing than what people have been doing. And it's really important because there's so many people out there who the old way of doing things is just not working for them anymore. And once folks get the book, go through the instruction, it's a very, the book's in the weeds, meaning it's really tactical. It kind of really gives you everything that you need to implement this. And you can try it. There's a link in the book where you can get a free trial of the software for 14 days. You can use it with unlimited access so that you can implement what we teach in the book and see if it works for you without even having to spend any money.
Nice. How much? Well, I'm not an affiliate yet, people, just so you all know. And I'm actually curious. How much is it? Ish.
It is normally $197 a month. And for the launch of the book, we've got some special pricing that is much, much lower than that. Nice. So if you're listening to this, go get it now so you can lock that in.
I appreciate that. Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about the pillars, because I know we sort of went to 1 and then 3, because I want to make sure that what they're actually creating is going to actually work for them. And again, regardless of platform, this is really important stuff.
Yep, absolutely. So The first is, how do we get new prospects? Like, how do you create your first list, basically? The second is then initial outreach and messaging. The third is nurture follow-up messaging. So you basically got, how do I get my first list? And then what do I say to those people initially? And then what do I say to them long term to keep in touch with them? And then the fourth is strategies for continually adding new prospects into your pipeline. Because and this is such a problem that so many businesses have. We did a study a few years ago. It was over 3,000 businesses that we interviewed and surveyed, and we were really just trying to get at what are problems that people in the small business world are having. And what we found was really, really interesting and kind of disturbing also. But that 88% of people in that study said that they struggle with cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we were like, okay, that sucks. What are the 12% doing? Or can we find any common points here that the 12% are doing that the 88% are not? And then there was one question that stood out, and that the vast majority of the 12% said that they have systems in place to consistently bring in new leads into their business. And the majority of the 88% said they do not.
Yes. Preach.
And
Sorry. I see this all the time. It's this hills and valleys, right? So you're so busy, especially service-based businesses, delivering, that then they get cash flow crunch and time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When they have time, we're not good as business owners in general of really refining the systems and just setting them up so that way you don't have to worry about it long term. Like, this is all I do. So I really appreciate that the data shows it also, because the people are in so much pain over something that is actually fixable. So sorry, continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of ways to fix it. What I share in the book and the way we teach is one way to do it that I think is really good. But the moral of the story is that if you don't have a system for getting new prospects into your business, then your business is on a shaky foundation. And so we spend a lot of time in the book, and it's a really key part of our entire methodology to help people put simple to implement solutions in place so that they can consistently be adding new prospects into their pipeline. And no matter what you're doing, if you're doing traditional email marketing and you have a list of a few hundred people, and if you're not adding people to that, you're just, every time you send out an email, you're losing people. You have to have a way to keep replenishing it. If you're using LinkedIn as your main marketing channel, you got to continually add new prospects into it. If you're using the trust equation, you have to continually add new prospects. Otherwise, you're just going to have this database that is going to grow stale eventually, and at some point isn't going to be effective for you anymore. And so one of the ways that the primary way that we teach for most people to do this with the trust equation is to use LinkedIn in combination with Connect 365. To use LinkedIn to first get connected with people and then move the relationship over to email. And so there's a lot of stuff out there that I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have seen a lot of different LinkedIn tools and bots and things like that people are using to automate messaging on LinkedIn. And if you're technically savvy, you probably can do some things with that might get you some results. And I know I see people out there talking about doing exactly that. But what we find for most of our customers is that stuff is just not really the best thing for them to be doing, because you can jeopardize your LinkedIn account. It's sometimes those tools are wonky and don't really work the way that you expected they would. But at a minimum, LinkedIn's been cracking down on them. And so if you don't know how to stay under the radar, then you're risking losing your LinkedIn account over using these tools. And we remember, like 5, 6, 8 years ago or something, there used to be these bots and tools to do things like that on Facebook. And then Facebook just completely eliminated all of them. And eventually LinkedIn will do the same. And so what we teach people to do is get connected with prospects on LinkedIn and then move the relationship and the conversation to email if you want to automate the messaging process, right? We also have, there's also amazing ways to use LinkedIn to do messaging on LinkedIn, but to message people manually. But there's a lot of people out there saying, I need to find a way to create some efficiencies with these messaging and campaigns and such. And so doing that, connecting on LinkedIn and then moving the conversation to email is a really effective way to do it.
Do you know what the constraints are on LinkedIn? Because this is the other thing, like clients that
Mm-hmm.
are like, I can only connect to this many, but it seems very squirrely or vague on what it is. Do you know what some of the constraints are so we can know how many to automatically go connect with or anything like that?
Yeah, this is not, so this stuff's always changing. So, last I heard it was you can have up to 30,000 connections on LinkedIn. And most people have 5,000 connection requests they can send out.
Okay.
Once you hit that, you can ask LinkedIn for more, and they usually give you more to use. So for most people, there's plenty of runway.
Is there a daily connection? Or because I know some people get throttled also.
Yeah. I think that if you send out way too many in one day, you can probably raise some red flags. But I don't know. We have an agency where we implement LinkedIn lead gen strategies for our clients every single day. And we never come close to hitting those kinds of issues, because you would never want to go on LinkedIn and just try and send out 1,000 connection requests in one day anyways, because what if like you get a low response rate and then you've kind of wasted all of those connection requests.
Totally.
So what we recommend to most people who are doing this is, take 5 minutes a day, 5 or 10 minutes, and send out 10 connection requests to people who look like great prospects for you. And maybe you get half of them to say yes. And if you do that 5 days a week, over the course of the month, you're going to have an extra 100 or so connections. And then you'll be able to, over time, you can see how that really snowballs if you have the discipline to stick with it and just put in those few minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
And for most people, that's enough. Sometimes people say, I want to spend 2 hours a day doing it. And then, you can send out a lot more connection requests. But that's what we recommend.
So I've also noticed engagement just on my own going down, right? The videos that I used to have would get a lot more reach, especially a lot faster. We'd have a lot of engagement.
Yeah.
And then just in general, sort of, even though it seems like we're getting as much engagement, we're not getting as far reach. Do you know any updates on what's going on with that right now too?
With the organic, like in the feed homepage? Yeah. So like how recently have you seen the results diminish?
Just the past few months.
Yeah, past few months. It's interesting because I'm still seeing a lot of video on LinkedIn that's getting lots of engagement, lots of likes and comments. Mm-hmm. I think the big thing though is that I do see your content from time to time. Mm-hmm. Now that you mention it, I haven't seen it much as of the last maybe month or so.
Crap. Yeah.
But what I'm seeing is that the videos that are like, oh, wow, look at that, 20,000 views, also is accompanied by hundreds of comments. Mm-hmm. And what I'm not seeing as much of that, maybe a year ago, it was like any video you put up on LinkedIn is just getting tons of views, regardless of the engagement. And so I don't know all the way their algorithms work, but that's kind of what I'm seeing. And what I've seen with my posts is that if I just put a video on LinkedIn that I think is some cool content, it doesn't seem to get much reach. But if I put something on there and I, game the system or whatever you want to call it to get a lot of comments by like offering some free thing. If you leave a comment, I'll message you with it or whatever it is. Like those seem to take off much more. Like we had a post yesterday that was that has over like almost 11,000 views as of this morning, but it was basically saying, leave a comment if you want a copy of my new book for free.
That's smart. So that's really smart. Yeah. Well, it just
kind of things are
articles are actually doing a lot better. So it was just interesting that video wasn't and that written was. That's why I was wondering if you knew some ideas. But that's a great idea.
They've come out with this new newsletter feature. Ours is called the Marketing Minute, and so you can have subscribers who aren't your connections on LinkedIn, who will subscribe to your LinkedIn newsletter. And this newsletter gets basically sent, your followers or subscribers of it get notified whenever you publish a new one. And so really quickly with ours, I mean, I feel like it's only been a thing within the last 6 months. And I think we have 27,000 subscribers right now, and it's really, really growing. LinkedIn's, you're on point with what you're saying there about like articles maybe getting more reach. That specifically, they're really pushing.
Are your followers automatically subscribers, or is it different and you have followers and subscribers?
They're different.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can have, this is like this.
We got a whole bunch of things. We have connections, we have followers, and we have subscribers. Okay, good. Just making sure.
Yeah. You can have first degree connections on LinkedIn, then who are automatically followers of your content, which would be normal articles that you would push out on LinkedIn. They're considered followers of that. Then you can have other followers who are not your connections, who have just signed up to be your followers so that they can see your articles that you publish on LinkedIn. And then you can have subscribers of your LinkedIn newsletter who get that different thing delivered to them as well.
In the same
So
feed?
there are, what's that?
In the same feed. So the newsletter is the same feed, or is it in mail?
It's not delivered to their inbox. No,
Okay. That would have been great. Okay.
Yeah. LinkedIn has been really smart about not doing things that overwhelm people's inboxes any more than there's already happening from people messaging each other.
Yeah.
But no, the newsletter is typically they're going to get a notification, so a little less intrusive. But man, we're just getting tons of views on these things. Like everyone we put out is getting like 10,000 views, even the ones that don't get a lot of comments. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, but yeah, so it's working really well.
That's awesome. No, I love hearing the now updated information. I know this is going out in just a handful of weeks because it's always changing and not everybody can keep up with the LinkedIn craziness that's going on, right? And we just see diminishing returns and go, well, there goes that. It's not working anymore. And then who has the time to go in and actually try and figure out the whole new system again, besides asking you? Because that's why I asked you. I'm glad I get to do this and get to ask you all the questions. All right. I know we have to start wrapping up and everybody needs to go get the book, of course. But besides that, what is one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of 1 million?
Well, I think that I'm going to get a little philosophical here because, I don't know. I talked about a lot of tactical stuff today. So you could do any of the stuff I talked about today. Go out and build a relationship with one of your best prospects and start connecting with people and be proactive and don't just sit back and hope it happens. But aside from that, when I think back to being before my company had reached the 7-figure mark, et cetera, the thing that I think held me back and I could have gotten there quicker is I would have had a greater belief in my ability to do it. And because I remember when I started my business and my goal was I was going to get to 200,000. I didn't even have an intention or an idea that we could create this, Inc. 500 company and yada, yada, yada. It was like, that's for other people. I'm just going to try and make a good income. And one thing led to another, and you get from this level to this level, and you think, maybe we could get to that level up there. And then you just keep building on it. And, for anybody who's at that place and trying to get to their first million or anything like that, I would say just, to think big.
I have to do a follow-up because I feel like you've done such a good job of that belief in going out after what you want. So it's really cool to hear because you were like a shark to me going and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And I just thought you just innately had that belief because some people do. Some people are like, I can crush it, right? So it's amazing that you were able to share that you didn't. So everybody that's listening, just know that it doesn't matter where you are right now. You could be Josh one day. No, when you grow up. Inc. 500. I think that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Make sure you give us the link one more time so everyone can go pick up that book.
It is connect365.io/EM. And thanks so much for having me, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And we will definitely link it up in the comments so everyone can click on the link if they don't remember. Thanks so much, Josh. Have an absolute amazing day.
See you guys.
If you enjoy this show, I would really appreciate your wonderful words of feedback. Go leave me a review. I would love a rating, whatever you can do in the time that you've got. I would so appreciate it.